welcome to the Accidental Fatherhood podcast with James and Ash. We started this podcast because there isn't a lot of support out there for us guys. We're going through a pretty tough time right now.
Yeah, accidents, not mistakes.
Unplanned pregnancies and new relationships and what is going on with our lives. So we're trying to bring a little bit of support through some awesome special guests, and
It's a place to commiserate together.
And we are rolling. Welcome everyone to a very special episode of Accidental Fatherhood podcast, because we are live at
Big sound.
Terrible. We're also joined today with a very special guest, as all our guests are, Clive Williams. Clive, do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction about who you are and what you do?
I'm a psychologist. I have been a psychologist for 41 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah. When did you start? When you're 12?
Yeah. No, I just moisturise a lot. I'm pretty... So I do a lot of what you would expect: anxiety, depression, couples therapy, some family therapy. But my obsession for the last maybe 30, 35 years is how change happens over time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know. I thought you were a really great idea for a guest, because obviously our lives are getting turned upside down right now, and they're still changing.
I was going to say change over time, but what about in a drop of an instant when you find out that someone's pregnant? Do you deal with short-term change? I mean, obviously it's a long-term. It's going to affect us long-term.
For sure.
But
do you want me to jump in there?
Yeah, go for it.
So, I guess I'm obsessed with the change that happens in a moment or in a day. That happened in my life as a kid. And then, so if one day you're just a couple and later that night, oh my God, you're a beginning of a family, that's the kind of stuff that I'm interested in. So for about the last 30 years, I've been really obsessed with why is it that some people really take to change? Why do some people take to bed? Why do some people take to grog?
Why do some people not wear condoms?
Yeah, in 2022. But moving right along. So how does that change happen over time? So this is my first ever plug of my book, even though it's been out for about 6 or 7 years. So so where do I start? Do you want me to talk about what this kind of change is?
I think so. I think especially for me, I feel like change for me, the best way to cope with change that I've in my practice in life is to accept what's going on and not resist. And the more I accept what's happening in my life, the more I'm more comfortable with that, and the more I can kind of adapt and figure out what to do. But the more I resist change is when I start suffering more. And that's been my experience. So I don't know if I'd be interested to see what your angle on that would be.
Well, I guess some people also would run away from change as well, like their attachment styles. I mean, obviously James and we've had some changes, and we're both adapted to those changes or are adapting to those changes, whatever way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
But there would be some people that would just avoid, right?
Absolutely.
Well. So
I would say that the number one coping strategy around the world is avoidance. Yeah. And that, I mean, it may present itself in a million different ways, like ghosting, or I don't want to talk about that, or I need to end this conversation. But it's the same thing: avoiding. So look, I think there's 3 kinds of change where change starts. There's intentional change, like you and your partner decide, yes, we will get married, we will get pregnant, and so you set about doing that. And with that kind of change, it's intentional. Usually there's lots of motivation. So, I will change jobs, I will go to gym, I will move cities, I will change a different career, lots and lots of motivation.
So it's almost like there's preparation for the change, which makes it a little bit easier, right? Because you're preparing.
There's a mindset, this is something I desire, yeah? This is how I want my future to look. The second type of change is what I call the serendipitous kind of change. And this is kind of the change that you might see often in falling in love. Like, you thought you were going to Hobart just for a 6-month stint Turns out you meet somebody in Hobart and you never leave Hobart ever again. That's a kind of change where it's serendipitous. Something, some topic, some place, some situation just grabs your attention and you kind of go, I want more. So that's the second kind of change. And I think the third kind of change
Our change.
is,
Waiting for it.
well, it can be unexpected, unwanted, and even up to the point of traumatic.
Yep. Tick.
Tick.
So, and most people who front to therapy, I think that's about right. Most people who front, at least to my therapy, are in that third category. So they've been living their life. It's kind of, it's got maybe a relationship, it's got a family, it's got social life, it's got bills, it's got work, it's got all sorts of stuff. And then at a certain point, there is an event or a series of events, and life as you knew it no longer exists. So that's kind of stage one. Now, so what comes with stage one is two key emotions, grief and fear. And those are the two emotions that we've kind of pathologized. So maybe particularly for men, particularly for fear. So grief, you're supposed to be happy now. Like just look on Instagram, everybody's happy, right?
Yeah.
And this fear thing, well, that's a bit taboo for men. But those are completely logical, normal emotions to have. So you miss your old life. You miss its predictability, its stability, its joys, its fun. Maybe you thought there was going to be a different life even before this event.
It's like he's reading my mind.
Yes. I can see the letter N coming through. Yeah. So that's the grief thing. And of course, men suck at grief. What do? We drink, we gamble, we seek pleasure, we do porn, we have an affair, we do all sorts of stuff. We work harder, everything to avoid grief. And so that's when the wheels can really start to fall if you avoid grief and you kind of go down that depression path. The second key emotion, the fear thing, which most psychologists, we call it anxiety, but it's basically a fear that interferes with everyday life, is because now that life as you knew it has completely disappeared, you go, what the is going to happen now? Suddenly you've gone from a life where there was probably a lot of certainty and maybe a few questions to now a life where, well, I know this is a bed. I know that that's a light. There's a lot of uncertainty and not much certainty. So those are the two key emotions. And for men, those are the key emotions that we've said you're not allowed to show, you're not allowed to have. You're allowed to get really angry, and that's about it. So for men, it can really start a process of really affecting mental health in an everyday sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting too because, around a birth of a child, right? So obviously James and I are in a similar situation where we've had this birth. And it's interesting that you said grief because it's like, we can't be upset here. We can't. That's an emotion that I haven't actually felt, or I wouldn't say I've felt personally because it's so, I guess, taboo in that instance. But you're right, and where all those things that you have described, and how we deal with grief, well, not all of them. I haven't done porn, but I've done.
Bullshit.
I have drunk more over this last period, and I've started to deal with that now with the drinking every day. And it wasn't much; it was one drink a day, but that was my coping mechanism.
Yeah.
I've done gambling. I've gambled a little bit as well. Again, it's not something that I haven't emptied my whole bank account gambling, but it's something that I've picked up. As a release.
And it's starting as an unhealthy habit, which could snowball into a bigger problem if you lost control of.
Yeah. So it is interesting that you say grief because it's something that I wouldn't say that's how I'd describe it, but I wouldn't know how to describe it either. So.
Well, it might just be moments where you're kind of in this new situation, which is completely foreign, and you're kind of thinking, how did this happen? How did my life get here? And you might be thinking back to the way it used to be. It may be moments of grief. It may be maybe a career or something that you've lost. I mean, this also happens for women, for mothers. If they're in the same boat, like, well, this wasn't on the cards, so where's that life that I had planned? So there can be a real taboo about it because, oh gosh, you've got this great joy, this great thing. But you need to be really wary of cultural things that say you shouldn't. You shouldn't feel this. Because what it's really doing is saying, stop being human. And we already do that enough to men.
Yeah.
So my guess is if any of that sadness is around, is to share it with somebody you trust or your partner. And because, I talk to a lot of men about bottling up stuff, and bottles can only take so much. And so then bottles turn into pressure cookers. You'll know when your bottle's full because you'll be Mr. Short Fuse. So you'll have finally got in, you'll think, I'll just have a cup of tea. I just need a cup of tea before stuff I've got to do. You go to the fridge, there's no milk, and you go, who the fuck drank the last milk? And there's this huge reaction to this little last thing. That's a short fuse. That means your bottle's full, the bottle's now become a pressure cooker, and you might begin to be a bit scary in your own home. Yeah? Men on short fuses are a bit scary sometimes to those they love. So it's absolutely essential that you make time to, maybe for the first time ever, to kind of just think, to allow yourself to feel some of that grief of the life that you had that you miss. And that is completely normal. Completely normal.
And do you have any tools or tricks to help relieve...
Go on trips.
to actually relieve that pressure for men when they're feeling in that place of, I've got a short fuse, I'm going to lose my temper, I'm snappy at everyone.
Yep.
What would you recommend as tools to kind of bring to release that pressure and bring back down to yourself? I know you said talk to your friends, but is there anything else that may be helpful?
Well, it's...
This would be a really good time to plug your book.
Yeah.
Well, it's...
So firstly, go out and get Clive's book. That's step number one.
All of us are much more comfortable in giving help rather than saying, I need help. But they're the two sides of the same coin, right? Though in Australia we pretend there's only one side of the coin. But anyway, it's the other side of the coin. So it might be stuff about, particularly if you've never done this before, and a lot of men have never done this before. So it might be something like, as you're squeezed in that round of golf, you kind of say, yeah, I almost bit my missus's head off. And that might be a start. And if he goes, oh, look at the time, gosh, I misjudged, I've got to get out of here. That's not the bloke to talk to. Yeah? So you're testing the waters with people, and you're kind of looking for somebody who kind of goes, I know exactly where you're coming from. And that's the beginning of that, what you guys have talked about a lot, that this vulnerability. But if you're completely new to this and you're still in your L plates, it's really about testing the waters. Who is in my life that I consider a mate or a friend or a family member or whatever, and I might just now test the waters and take it to a more scary level for me, but a deeper level for us. And if you get some pushback, like particularly, come on, mate, look at your life. You're young, you live in Australia, your missus is pregnant.
This dismissive kind of language.
Well, I don't know if it's dismissive. I think because we like people and love people, we don't want them to be down. So we want to change their mood. And so we kind of go, James, look what so much you've got. How can you be sad about or anything? And what your job is, and I tell this to people, sometimes I put on bits of paper, I put on a whiteboard, they take a photograph, and I say, to whoever you're talking to, make sure your job is to not, ! Underline, make me feel better, not. Now, it's kind of weird, psychologists telling people to not make you feel better. But the irony of it is that when people say, well, okay, tell me more. I want to try and make you feel better. Tell me more. Then people start to feel better. That's the irony. Once you get stuff out of the pressure cooker goes back to maybe being a bottle. Yeah? And we all got a bottle. Sometimes we got a lot of stuff up. That's just the way it is. But sometimes we need to be able to take the cap off the bottle. And that's what we have. Well, this is a mass sweeping statement, but I'm pretty sure as a culture, we do not teach men to do that.
Sharing is caring.
Yeah. Well, I know that us checking in every week helps me out.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think as men, we like to fix the situation. And I'm definitely guilty of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I remember my brother had a bit of depression one time, and I'm like, what do you have to be depressed about? You live in this beautiful life. You're on the Gold Coast. Like, what do you mean you're depressed? Like, I personally couldn't understand it, but I think it wasn't from a place of trying to be curious and understand why. It was like, I just completely went, how could you? Like, you know what I mean?
And I think that's an easy trap to fall into too, because I've done the same thing where I've said, and someone's depressed, so you try and open their eyes for them. So I think it's quite a common thing. So I think even if you're looking for someone, or if someone's talking to you about it, or someone that is depressed, it's great advice. Actually ask them and get them to get out what they're depressed about.
I mean, if I did rule the world and I could make a law, I would say there is a law. Do not try and change the way people feel. Do not try and make them feel better. I'm a psychologist. I spent 41 years in small rooms talking to people about their feelings. I don't know how to change the way people feel in an instant. If I did, I'd own my own island,
And you put yourself out of a job.
Yeah. So, but it's really about it. I think it does a lot more damage than we know, because what it does is effectively shut down a lot of people, and then they're back in the office, they're back in the kitchen, they're back in the bedroom, shut down. It's just not a good way to live. Because then you're on the road to short fuse and Mr. Exploding, Mr. Scary Man in the house.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty good advice too. And I guess we should give out a shout out to the mate bystanders that helped get us here to Big Sound, because that's great advice for people for domestic violence situations, and it could help prevent a situation, because we heard stories about guys that were normal day guys, and then their fuse blew, and all of a sudden they're doing some hectic, crazy stuff.
And they have a saying, it's call your mates in. So when you feel something in your gut, something doesn't feel right, or they're acting in a weird way, like call them in and say, hey, what's going on? I think, and that's being as well, being empathetic to what they're going through. And I guess that's a skill we have to learn. And
yeah. And as males, we often don't do that. We let mates, we let blokes, we let them get away with inappropriate stuff. And sometimes we just have to learn the hard way. The other point that I think one of you made was about avoidance.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, if you can, do a bit of a stock take. Avoidance, I'm pretty sure, is the number one coping strategy for everybody in difficult places. There's my boss, I'm going the other way. Yeah? I've got a new assignment. Oh my gosh, look what's on Netflix. Whatever it might be. So it can just occur in a million different ways that look so normal, and you can rationalize it so well. I don't know if this is a good example or a bad example. I was chatting to someone about their relationships this day, and they've been together 12 years. But this bloke has never met his partner's family. They've been together 12 years, and I think her family lives a couple of suburbs away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, she's a part of his family, and they do lots of stuff together. And for 12 years, he's been asking the same question. Actually, no, he hasn't been asked the same question, because he doesn't want to cause a fight, doesn't want to upset her. She's kind of said, in my own time. Well, that's 12 years. Now, I was trying to rattle his cage a little bit in a very respectful, therapeutic way to kind of say, so 12 years, so you won't raise this thing directly, are you complicit in your own secrecy? Because he's a secret. He's hidden. Now that's avoidance. I'm going to avoid upsetting my partner. Your job in a relationship is to be honest. If he or she is upset, so be it. But your job's to be honest.
And she's been avoidant as well.
Absolutely.
She doesn't want to...
Well, it's a culture of avoidance, which he has now bought into. And you really need to reflect, is this the kind of relationship we want? Is this the kind of family we want? And my guess is, I've never met her, but my guess is that she might be repeating her family culture. You know, like, I'm surprised that why hasn't her father, her mother, her brother, sister ever said, come along for a barbie? It's all this kind of, it looks like avoidance. Now, I could be wrong. I've never met these people. But it's this whole kind of avoidance strategy. So avoidance can appear in a million different forms, but underneath it's one thing about, I'm too scared to rock the boat. And in relationships, your job is to rock the boat with honesty.
People pleasing. I was guilty of that in my last serious relationship, of not wanting to rock the boat, didn't want to get into an argument, just wanted to do as I was told.
Yeah. Hey brother, I hear you. I was there. I got the gold Olympics for people pleasing.
And it wasn't. We were talking to Tyler a couple of weeks ago, and he said if you were clear about those boundaries from the beginning, then your relationship would have ended sooner, because you were both being honest with each other. And when I found myself very unhappy in that relationship towards the end, because I wasn't serving myself or my needs, and I just wasn't happy there anymore. Yeah. And something needed to change. And as I started making those changes and being more honest with my partner, that's when the friction started happening, and that's when we had to kind of call it a day. Yeah. And that could have all been over a lot quicker if we'd have been more honest with each other at the start. Yeah. And I find myself even now, like because I do a lot of meditation and things like that, I can check in with my own feelings a lot, and I know when I'm avoiding. Like, I will just get busy around the house doing stuff, or I will just not want. I'll be like, oh yeah, and just like kind of go like skip over the subject, or not want to get into it too deeply. And I feel like I really have to be in the right mood to have those big conversations, because I think I find it confronting, and there's a little bit of bravery there from me that I have to. And sometimes I do it over text because I feel more comfortable of expressing my feelings there and not having to deal with the backlash that sometimes I get. And I can be very kind about my words through text, but that's just something I've picked up over the last week, a behaviour that I've seen in myself. And
can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
So does the text go down well? Is it well received?
No. Yeah. However, she's not actually here. She's in another state, and she is pregnant at the moment, so
nothing goes down well.
Nothing goes down well, basically. But and I'm okay just kind of expressing how I feel, and I want to talk about this when you get back. So I leave that door open, and I just want to set this is how I'm feeling at the moment, and we need to talk about this when you get back. But I just want you to have a think about, this is how I'm feeling at the moment. So you can have a think about that, and we can have a chat about it. Yeah. So it's kind of more about starting the conversation and opening it up. And I probably would have had this conversation if she didn't go into state. It would have just got to the surface. And I'm one of those people that once it's on my mind, I need to talk about it. I need to get rid of it. I need them to understand how I'm feeling right now, and I can't bottle it up. I have trouble with that. So I like to get it done, and and not suffer in silence, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Does that make sense?
And sometimes your messages can be a bit abrupt. I've had.
Is this from personal experience?
Oh yeah,
this is the first I've heard of it.
But they can be. But I just go, oh, that's James. It's just direct to the point, and I don't take it personally. So I've learnt.
Hey, there's a smiley emoji at the end usually.
Yeah, or a sunglasses emoji,
which means it's cool.
That's cool. So
when you get an abrupt, I've been a therapist for 41 years. I can't help myself. So
we're doing a couples counselling.
Yeah, if I'm going in the wrong direction, just tell me. So when you get the abrupt text, how do you feel?
Well, I've dealt with anxiety my whole life. Didn't know that I dealt with it until I saw a psychologist.
Yeah. So that makes you anxious?
It did, but I've learned. I know James well enough to know that he just needs to get some points across. and
Did
not
you
to
ever tell
take
him
it.
that you felt anxious about the text?
No, because it's literally like a 2-second anxious, and then it's like, oh, it's just James. He's just getting his point across.
Okay.
So
Well,
we're in couples
I may
counselling.
be jumping in too soon, but what I would say is, did you just tell yourself a little story to not pay attention to how you feel?
It's avoidance.
Ooh. Yeah, probably, but it's...
And that's avoidance.
Yeah,
And that's another bit in the bottle.
yeah,
They can all just be little bits.
yeah, right.
How far away are we from the top of the bottle there, Ash? Am I pushing you over the edge?
Sometimes.
But it might be like, gosh, my mate's saying I'm a bit abrupt. So, and if that's news to you, you might go, how? When? What bit's abrupt? What would be better?
Yeah. For me, it's efficient and direct, and it's how. Yeah.
Yeah. I also put myself in other people's shoes when I get these things.
Yeah.
And I try and think of it from their point of view. So like when James writes these messages, it's, I know that he's in front of the computer,
Yes.
and then so he can type on his keyboard really quickly. And so they probably wouldn't intentionally be this long, but it's like, and it's not bad. It's just a couple of like, here's a couple of points, blah, 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 blah. Cool,
What would
thanks.
you prefer him to do?
Call.
Yeah.
And your partner would be the same for sure.
Both want me to call them.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just I feel like it's my communication style. I'm usually very busy, and I find it annoying. You try and call someone,
Yeah,
you've got to catch them at the right time. So
we
I'm like,
have also discussed this too, haven't we?
I think
about
that's
the texting,
fine, but
so
you're
that's
not
fine.
chatting to you. You're chatting to a different person.
yeah, and you're not chatting to me. He's not chatting to me though either.
So the thing is,
What do you mean?
I mean, you communicate your way, I communicate my way.
Yeah.
So there's a middle grade.
my way's way worse than James. I'll forget text message, so that's avoidance as well. Like I'll go, oh, that's a really important text. I need to text that person back. I'll save it for when I get more time later, because right now I'm too busy to think about that text, and then I'll forget about texting it. And so people get really upset at me for doing that.
look,
Clive's just making
I guess the
notes.
point I was trying to make is,
I
if you're a boss, maybe you get to choose. But if you're in a relationship, a friendship, or a relationship with people, then you have to take stock and say, this is my preferred way, but tell me, what's that like for you? And if they say call. Yeah?
And I feel like, to be absolutely honest, we do both.
What?
We talk to each other over the phone and we message. So I feel like we've both met each other halfway, which is, for me, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with chatting on the phone.
Yeah, no.
Do you think he met you halfway?
Oh, no, I know he has. I know he has. I try and text more too now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because that was identified in one of our first podcasts. Because I was like, oh, what do you mean you're a texter?
Well,
I'm a caller. Like,
and my partner's the same. She's a caller. She loves the calls. And I'm like, oh, I'm just not that kind of person.
Yeah.
But
Once you're in a relationship, you can't remain the person you were. You just have to kind of now change.
Yeah, and what's your like? I feel like there's a lot of compromise. Is compromise the best word to use there?
I have trouble with the word compromise.
I know, that's why I'm like just questioning.
So, look, I only got to the first stage of my change model, but that's okay. I'll come back. So in relationship, I tell people you have to learn the polar opposite of what you've done your entire life. So, if you've been a dominant person, you need to learn how to collaborate. If you've been a person without a voice, you need to learn to have a voice. If you've been a person that's hidden, you need to get visible. You need to learn a polar opposite in any relationship. So the couple I was talking about before, he is a very quiet, anxious person. And so he has learned to make himself a small target. He needs to learn to make himself a target because that's what honesty is required. Am I making sense? It's the polar opposite.
100% understand.
So sometimes us anxious folk who like particular ways of behaving because it helps us manage our anxiety, we've got to go, okay, this works for me, but maybe it doesn't work for the relationship. And it's I don't know if there's much point in saying it's the way I am, it's efficient. The question now has to shift to what's best for the relationship. So instead of thinking just about me, I got to think about us. It's the polar opposite. Instead of one, I need to think of two. And after two, maybe I need to think of three. So there's all these polar opposites that need to happen. But we fight them because they think, I'm losing me.
Mm.
Well, you don't have to lose you, but you do need to ask, is the me that I'm offering, is it making the relationship better or worse?
Yeah.
And then you might have to think about the polar opposite, because then you can go back to your usual style everywhere else. But relationship, we often need to learn the polar opposite.
That makes complete sense to me. And, they do say being in a relationship is like holding a mirror up to yourself, and you see what your worst traits are reflected back at you almost. Is that correct? Have I got mixed that up?
I don't know. I haven't read that book.
Well, yeah, I would say relationships are more an opportunity to unlearn the past. That's, I've been looking at relationships now for a long time. I think I'm pretty good at it. People come back, their friends come back, their family members come back. But it seems to me that most of us have learned how to relate, how to cope at a pretty young age. And it's below conscious awareness. And we think that's our normal, and we go off into the world and we be our normal, and we seem to get pats on the back for that. And then lo and behold, we start this relationship and our normal meets somebody else's normal. And so you might start to have mini World War IIIs. So relationships are often an opportunity to, how did I become this person? Why do I relate like this? Is it best for the relationship? Now that kind of thinking, this sounds like an exaggeration, but I think that's pretty revolutionary, at least from the Australia that I know. I'm a very working class mentality. And, excuse me, family, if you're listening, but in my family, if people mentioned an emotion, it would be like, give yourself an uppercut. We're here to get on with things. We're here to make things work, fix things, men and women, yeah? Not this kind of feeling stuff. So to begin to sort of say, this relationship is an opportunity for me to look at my past and unlearn, like people kind of go, what the fuck is that? But really it is about some of the stuff that you learned early, it's not going to work in this relationship. It's going to blow it up. And unless you want to repeat mummy and daddy to the nth degree, some which is good, maybe some not so good, you're going to have to learn some polar opposites. And that's hard because we dig our heels in. We go, that's not fair, or I'm right, she's wrong, or he's wrong, or whatever it might be.
And it must feel like it's obviously your ego, but you would feel like you're losing a part of yourself in a way, because and I know we just use the word compromise, but you're changing, who you are and what you stand for sometimes to better work, for the relationship to work better. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like we need to, what word would you use? I mean, learning polar opposites is also, changing who you are to adapt to the new relationship. Is that correct?
This may sound like, psychology speak, but I would say you're adding to your repertoire. So, for example, a lot of people in relationships stonewall. There are certain things that they will not discuss. Talk to the hand. And so often that leaves a partner really scrambling to get over the wall, under the wall, around the wall, through the wall. They're doing a lot of work. No, not talking about it. If you want to have a loving relationship, then the opposite of a stonewall is to say, I don't want to have this conversation. I feel really awkward. I maybe feel a bit sick in my stomach, but I'm going to sit here. I'm going to really pay attention to the stuff that I really don't want to hear. Go. Yeah?
And which is kind of bringing me back to what I was saying before, is have those hard conversations. There's a bit of bravery
Absolutely.
that needs to happen, and you need to and I said, I need to be in the right frame of mind to have those conversations sometimes, because it takes a lot of energy and emotion to actually have those conversations and be vulnerable and open yourself up to possibly being hurt, which is essentially what may happen. Is you may actually open yourself up to judgment or blame or
if you're going to have those difficult conversations, you better make sure your frontal lobe is functioning.
How do we do that?
Yeah.
Like if you're in fight-flight mode, you're going to be back in those behaviours that you learned early on. Yeah.
So have this conversation when there's love in the relationship, not when you're in a fight. Is that what you're saying?
Hopefully, these conversations are anxiety provoking. They are. They just are, because they're awkward. And all of us have at the back of my mind, will this cause conflict? Will this cause distance? Will this cause loss of the relationship? That's always in the back of mind of every bit of friction, right? So there's a fear. Fear triggers the fight, flight, freeze response. Your frontal lobe goes off to South America, right? So this is a skill that psychologists will teach you, you know, and you sit in the room and the psychologist is teaching a whole bunch of stuff. Even when you're 8 out of 10, you know, with anxiety, how do we get your frontal lobe more online? So that in that moment, when a part of you wants to go, just get effed, you're kind of going, okay, my heart's about to fall out of my chest. I feel sick in my stomach. But what you're saying is you're really angry with me. Yeah. It's about, we do this all the time in professions. We put pilots in crash situations so that their fight-flight response goes through the roof, but their frontal lobe stays on. I think couples therapy is a bit like that. It's a simulator for relationships where people get triggered in the room and upset or angry or whatever, but you're there guiding, teaching these skills to keep that frontal lobe on so that they're working to collaborate in really awful, difficult moments, but they're collaborating and constructing a relationship rather than destructing a relationship. So, you have to have your frontal lobe on. No good talking to people if frontal lobe's missing, because you may as well just say blah, blah, blah. You know the dog, like in The Simpsons, when Homer used to chat to him, sometimes the bubble out of the dog would go blah, blah, blah. Anyway, maybe you're too young.
No, not too young.
James isn't.
Fuck you, Ash.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay.
That makes sense. And I feel like I'm lucky enough to be in a relationship where we can have those conversations without needing someone to be there. But I've also been in couples therapy as well, where it's great to have an unbiased opinion about what's going on and have their voice in the conversation to say, hey, yeah, I think you're being unreasonable here, and actually kind of have a bit of a referee almost. I found it was just nice both being able to express their feelings, and then they can go, okay, so how does that make you feel? How does that make you feel? And we could kind of, without someone controlling the conversation almost, you've got someone kind of helping you navigate it rather than... Because someone can...
it's a navigation. I don't know if it's anyone who would say, well, you're being unreasonable. I mean, I think you know your Gottman stuff.
Yes.
So that's 45 years of research on couples, right? Thank God. The findings have pretty much stay the same, so there's not too much to learn. Thank God. But one of the things that the Gottmans are really clear about is that most of us are going to fall into criticism and defensiveness. I love you, you love me, you're doing this thing that pisses me off. Because I love you and you love me, I will tell you it's pissing me off, and you will stop and you will change. And so that's the logic. So you do it. And you go, honey, this is really pissing me off. And then he goes, son of a bitch, I only did that because X, Y, Z. So now you've got defense. Now, people in defense aren't hearing a thing. I think there's research that says when people are in defense, the average waiting time is that 17 seconds. They're already preparing their defense. And then you go, oh, well, you didn't hear me, so maybe I'll say it louder. And maybe I'll throw in a bloody or an F-bomb. And I'll say it again because I love you, you love me, I'll tell you what you're doing wrong, and you'll stop it. And you tell them again, they go, holy bloody hell, what's with all the criticism? Yeah? So the Gottmans are really clear about two simple things. If you can, it is really hard, it takes years to practice. Just avoid criticism and defensiveness.
And blaming, right? It's not using the words, you did this.
Yeah.
And that's what I only had a very brief stint of the Gottman theory.
Yeah.
And that was, they said, instead of saying, you didn't take the bins out, I'm always going to, instead of saying that, say, when the bins, instead of making it personal, it's like, when the bins don't go out, I feel like I've got to do it, and I feel really let down by it, and letting them know that you're upset by the situation, not that they caused it, but then they can kind of, instead of being defensive, they're like, oh, I've really upset my partner. next week I'll put the bins out because I don't want my partner to feel that way. So it completely turns that defensiveness down and makes them actually want to care for you and not have you in that pain. And I guess that's one thing I picked up from the Gottman theory. Is that would I be right?
If you can get into an I feel, I need sort of statement, and when I was learning this, I used to practice on there's marketing people, and I'd say, and I said that it was Harry, I'm feeling really frustrated with this call. That's a feeling. I need to talk to someone else. Yeah, that's a need. And Harry go, oh, okay. Yeah, and I'd be practicing in shops when I was waiting for somebody to tell me the price of the shoes or something. I go, I'm getting a bit irritated. I need to be somewhere soon. I'd prefer if somebody spoke to me in the next minute or two.
So become a Karen.
God, I hope not. God, I hope not. Not my understanding of Karens. Karens are entitled and they're total criticism.
We do not need any more Karens in the world.
Yeah. I hope not. I hope not.
Because they would be all about the blame. You're not doing this. I want this.
They're 100% about the blame.
Yeah. Blame, completely toxic. But if you can just get into that thing about I feel, I need, as opposed to you did this, you didn't do this, you always do that, you shouldn't have done that, you never did this, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, and I know the difference of when people say that as well. I hate getting blamed for things like you didn't do the dishes or you left that there. So I feel like I'm very cautious about how I say things now. But it's not easy to not use you in a sentence.
Yeah.
When there's something going on.
When that happens, you can kind of say...
When there's only two of you in the house.
Yeah, when there's only two of you, it's like...
when that happens, you can say, honey, sweetheart, whatever your term of endearment is, sweet cheeks, pumpkin, whatever it is. I'm feeling a bit blamed. I need to know what you need. And then you can cut straight to the chase. Not want, but need.
I think that's a tool for you there, Ash.
I'm natural at this. I'm a natural.
Are you?
This is all stuff I do at home.
Yeah, bullshit.
I'm actually pretty good at this. I talk a big game outside of the home, but But yeah, I don't know. I have said need. I definitely said need.
Can I jump, or are you going somewhere with this? Because
no, you go right ahead.
This model of change.
Mm.
I think so. After the grief and the fear of this, your life changes in a day. What comes after that is, what I call the refusal point. Like, just about everybody, I've been doing this for a long time. A good example is a terrible example. So people might come and they go, I've got a diagnosis of cancer. And the refusal stage is, this can't be happening. This can't be real. And I don't know if you had a few moments or a few days, a few weeks of thinking,
months.
This can't be happening.
9 months.
Yeah?
Months, Clive. Until I saw that baby. Until I held her in my hands.
Right, yeah.
It was refusal. And then even then, I was like, it might be a dream.
So in psychology, we probably call that denial. You're trying to deny the reality of stuff.
So the longest river in Egypt.
Yeah.
Denial.
Oh, God, James.
And it gets a bad rap, but denial, refusal is just your brain needing time to wrap your head around what's happened. Yeah?
Yeah.
Why have you got the giggles?
Oh, he made a Nile joke about
that joke.
It was so bad.
About denial.
I know it was like grade 6.
Yeah.
I think that was from grade 6.
Look, I'm preparing to be a dad. What can I say?
He's cracked himself up a lot.
I've got another. If you want another dad joke, I've got another. So that would be, because somebody said before, like, running away. Running away can be part of that denial period. Like, this cannot be my life. This cannot be my life.
Yeah.
I can't handle this. And what you're really doing is just running up against your own self-beliefs about what kind of person you are, what you can and can't do. And these moments in our life when life as we know it suddenly disappears, the polar opposite, you used to think of yourself like this, and if you say yes to this adventure, you're going to realize, oh my God, I'm so much more than I ever thought I was. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I was a little gay boy in an all-male school, and I tried to make myself a really small target. So the opposite of that is kind of being in leadership positions. Never thought that could ever happen, right? But obviously it does. And it's the same in these kinds of situations. Whatever's in that relationship, what's the polar opposite of that? And that needs to change the beliefs that you have about yourself. I can't be a dad, or I can't be a good dad, or I can't learn, or I can't change nappies, or whatever it might be. It's about, well, those beliefs you have about yourself, they're probably from a different time, a different family, yeah. But they're really limiting, and in a situation where your life changes suddenly, what's really being asked of you is to be more. Be more tomorrow than you were today. And that's, yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that's helped me with putting myself out there, like you've written this book and this is your first kind of plug for the book, is it? Or...
Yeah, I'm hopeless at self-promotion. Terrible at it. Shocking.
Yeah, right. So is there anything, do you think that's because of these patterns or this previous behaviour from growing up? Do you think that's part of why you haven't put yourself out there? Is there a little bit of that still like residual kind of happening?
Am I going to have to pay for this therapy?
Yeah, I was going to say, the tables have turned. I'm sitting here getting the popcorn out.
I just don't think it's very Aussie. Like,
Tall puppy.
The Oprah Winfreys of the world kind of like, we got this book and I'm here and I'm great and I'm fantastic. Whereas I think Aussie's like, did you just cure cancer? No, I didn't. I'm pretty sure you cured cancer. No, it's just nothing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We kind of play it small.
And that is a huge problem in Australia, the tall puppy syndrome.
Yeah.
But for even to just do this podcast, my frame on it is I'm we're sitting here with three anxious men. Like you may not like
3 anxious men walked into a pub.
One had a bottle of water.
So we tackle the world very differently to say extroverts. But for me to put myself out there for like doing this podcast, I've had to go, how can I make this about what I'm doing and how can I make this about helping others, not about me anymore? And for me, that was a driver to help me step into that power and help me do this and not make it about me anymore. Make it about, I want to actually help people, and how am I going to help people if I don't get this book out there? How am I going to help people? Yeah. And I think what you've written, I'd love to get a copy of your book. What's it called, by the way?
A Mudmap For Living.
It sounds like an
essential.
Sounds like an essential for the
Get
bookcase.
rid of the Bible off your bookshelf because no one needs to read that crap. And
Bible, Shakespeare, Dickens, Williams.
Yeah, kind of got a ring to it there.
Shakespeare, Dickens, Williams. Sounds like a porn time. Sorry,
but yeah, I would encourage you to I hope people listen to this podcast and go, I want to see what that book's all about, because you've gone to this trouble, you've got so much experience, and I think it's a gift to the world. And by holding yourself back and not getting it out there, I think you're doing a disservice to the community.
Look, it has sold about 500 copies on Amazon, which totally amazes me. And I get these emails from people going, I carry your book everywhere.
Oh, man.
So I go, whoa, strut my stuff around the kitchen for 5 minutes thinking, whoa, I'm the man. But, that whole your branding, marketing thing, it's like a whole different world. I don't really want to know about it, actually. It's a bit too much. I'll stick to my lane, psychology. But it's out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, if anyone...
Amazon
seems like the place to grab it.
A Mudmap to Life.
A Mudmap For Living.
Mudmap for Living.
Yeah.
Got that name totally wrong.
Yeah.
A Mudmap for Living, Clive Williams.
Yeah. And there's lots of... there's a bit of personal stuff in there which scared the beheebie-jeebies out of me. Some suicidal moments as a young man, being a young gay man at a time when it was a crime, a sin, and a mental illness. That was pretty tricky.
That sounds hard to navigate.
So that's in there. So it's a bit sort of scary that it's in there. But there's lots and lots of stories of putting the skills into practice, like how people, what do you do with the polar opposite? What do you do when you're in this refusal stage? What do you do with grief? What do you do with anxiety? All that just practical stuff. Because I think this is true. The good thing about my background is it has to be practical.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you read stuff and you think, oh, that's interesting, but what will I do? This is just practical. And because I work a lot with men, they just want to know, what do I do? They don't want concepts. They don't want polysyllabic kind of phrases and a glass of red wine, let's discuss it. They want, what will I do?
Mm-hmm.
And at some level, it's pretty simple, challenging, scary, but pretty simple.
And is it tools and a framework that you are offering in this book, or what does the book look like in terms of?
It's like a little workbook. I'm going to do a reprint because some of the feedback is the print's too small. There's nowhere to write words. So I'll do a bit of a reprint. But it's kind of like the Mudmap has 12 stages, and from day one when your life changes through to, well, I guess the ending of that story is where you master these new polar opposite skills. And so that journey usually takes years. And so each stage, it's about what happens at the various stages of change as it happens over time, where you shoot yourself in the foot, and what you might need to do. So hopefully it's pretty practical.
Hey, Clive, we are probably going to have to wrap it up soon, but I did want to circle back to one of the very first things that we spoke about, and that's when you were talking about asking some questions if someone comes to you rather than saying it's all going to be okay, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Do you reckon that as a psychologist you could probably give us a couple of example questions of what to ask if someone does come out, just for the audience who might fall into the common trap that James and I have done in the past, where we're like, mate, you've got everything to live for, you got this, you got that, like, instead maybe some common questions, some really insightful questions that will help bring it out? Or is it too case-based scenario?
I've been doing this for a long time now. I've kind of got it down to tell me more. I seem to say that a lot. Tell me more. So I fucked it up with my missus, or this shit's going down at work, or whatever it might be. I'm usually saying something along the lines of, tell me more. What do you mean by that? How did that happen? Like a bit like a sort of a investigative journalist,
Yeah, like a curious mindset. It's like, okay, well, tell
curious
me more.
mindset.
Yeah. I know Brene Brown, she talks about empathy and saying, instead of trying to fix it, you go, I'm sorry you feel that way. And then...
I didn't even know about the sorry, because I'm always thinking people just didn't wake up today and decide to have difficult feelings. This has kind of been evolving, and a feeling's not a factor, but it's a guide to where you are, right? So I'm really interested in, well, what is it and how did you get there? And then, and I know it sounds a cliche, but the flip side of saying tell me more is just as important, is when people actually do tell you more, that you validate it. That if James comes up to you tomorrow, Ash, and goes, I really fucking hate you.
Yeah.
And you go, you hate me? Why? Yeah?
Yeah.
The validation is kind of like, because often in the arguments we want to shut down the stuff that we don't want to hear, whereas we know from 45 years of research is that pay attention to the stuff that you don't want to hear. Yeah.
How do you go about validating if you say, tell me more, what words do you use then to then validate what they're sharing with you? Is there any tips on that?
Yesterday, a young guy told me he was suicidal, and I just went, that sounds terrifying. That sounds overwhelming. And he just sat there, kind of like, these feelings sort of don't fly in his family, so I'm probably the only person that he's talking to about these feelings. But it would be that a bloke the other day, he shocked his wife and he got really honest. I think maybe because there was the third person, he got a bit brave. And he went, XYZ. And she was like, are you for real? Are you making this shit up? Is this for real? Right? And then you could see his panic kick in. And I just went, I said, oh, what's going on for you? How are you feeling? And he said, frightened. I said, you look a bit more terrified. He said, yeah, the last thing I want to do is upset her. And I said, yeah, I can see that. I can really see it.
That's I think that's most men in most relationships with women anyway. Every relationship I've ever been in, you don't want to upset the woman. I don't know.
Well, because it's that back of the mind, well, if we have this Barney and maybe she won't speak to me for the next day, and then what, does it escalate? Does it grow? Like, are we a happy couple? Are we an unhappy couple? Are we on the rocks? Like, uncertainty? And then you're a bit like, when I first met my husband, I came from a family that knew how to Barney, right? I've since curtailed that. And so he would see me and I'd be full fight mode. And he'd be like that stunned deer. And I could see in his brain going, I'm just going to stay very still and not say anything. I mean, now he's completely different. But yeah, he was initially just, I don't want to cause this to go any further.
Don't say the wrong thing.
Yeah, don't say the wrong thing.
Yeah, well, that's been really, really helpful.
Yeah, super helpful.
Have you got any final tips for new fathers out there? I know you're not a father yourself, but any tips for young men struggling with this massive change that's happening? Yeah. Is there one takeaway we could...
It's not supposed to be easy. Your life has just been put in the spin dry. You're still trying to work out which way is up. Be on the lookout for when you've sort of become New South Wales versus Queensland. So what can happen is people compete for their needs. I'm tired. Well, I'm tired. Well, I need a break. Well, I need a break. You get in this competition. Yeah. You gotta work. Well, I'm tired and you are tired. Yeah. I'm fed up and I'm fed up. Well, what will we do? Rather than, well, this is what you should do. Well, this is what you should do. What are we going to do? What are we going to do when we want to take this baby back to the hospital? Or what will we do? Will we get in the car?
They don't get refunds. I tried.
And that's really easy to say, but in the heat of the moment, really hard to do. But be on the lookout for when you put yourself up in stiff competition with my needs are more important than your needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Yeah. Awesome.
And yeah, it's a team effort from, and we've got to remember that we're in this together and
step up as a captain. That's what I've sort of felt like I've been doing. Is like I can see this team's breaking down. I'm going to step up as the captain because no one's leading the team. That's someone's got to and often I've been team captains and stuff before, and it's like okay, well, first to training. You know what I mean? Like I'm the first to training. So, and it's just trying to make that extra effort, doing that extra effort to de-escalate. Yeah, the situation.
Yeah, I mean, it might be something like, I am exhausted, and really, honey, I don't want to hear that you're exhausted, but okay, I hear that you're exhausted. We're both exhausted. What will we do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes young couples get into this thing of all this stuff has to be done, and actually, in that moment, it doesn't. If there's shit on the floor and there's a dirty nappy and this kitchen's a mess and it looks like World War III in the lounge room, just sit. Sit.
Thank you.
I would have a lot of trouble with that, and I think Talisha would as well.
Yeah,
Maybe,
you and Talisha would make a great couple.
Not for a week, but just for a minute, regroup.
Yeah.
Be okay with the mess.
Yeah, I'm sweet with the mess.
I know you are.
Yeah.
Polar opposite. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dot your I's, cross your T, man. Get used to mess.
Yeah, I think he's gonna have no choice soon.
Yeah. Be okay with change.
Goodbye, old order.
It was fun while it lasted.
Yeah.
Well, look, Clive, it's been an awesome conversation. It's been really great to have you here. Thanks, Big Sound, for having us here. Thank you for all the people watching. Oh, there's no one there. Online. Well, it's been great, and
hopefully we're going to invite back next year to Big Sound where we can have an actual audience. Hopefully we're big enough to do a presentation or something.
Maybe.
And Clive, you might be able to come back.
Thank you very much for today. Thanks for the
worries.
opportunity.
And where can people find you online?
drclivewilliams.com.au.
Yep.
Yeah.
And your book's on Amazon.
Yes.
And is there a link on the website as well to the book?
Yeah, there should be.
We'll put a link in the description, in the podcast description.
you.
So
Thank
if anyone needs it,
Yeah.
yeah. Amazing. Thanks so much, Clive.
Thank
See everyone. Just as the sirens come.